Welcome back, everyone. In part one of Foundational Theories in Environmental Psychology, we looked at how the research must focus on the entire environment. So we look at it from a user perspective. We've got to look at what is happening, what is causing issues within that environment for the users in order for us to bring about change. So let's continue looking and diving into this part of this problem. Okay, there's several different types of tools that we use in research to find out where the problems may lie. One of these is called a needs assessment. These will help us to determine who will use a particular environment, how they will use it, and how that environment will be perceived. If we do not understand these situations or these aspects of how an environment is perceived by an individual, then we don't really have a track to go on. We've got to find out. In the needs assessment, what we do is we go in there and we ask questions of the users. What do you need? What are the issues now? What would make this more comfortable? There's different questions that we would ask in different situations. Sometimes you can find some that are developed. Sometimes you have to develop your own. Another way we find the problem in design is pre-design research. The pre-design research is a guide that helps us design the environment that we do. It is an evaluation of a client's requirements prior to construction or occupancy. This is also called behavior-based architectural programming. It's kind of like a needs assessment, but it's really more specific because you would go into every single area of that company and talk to each manager, talk to each employee if you possibly have the time. And you really would want to do this in situations where you've got problems. It can be very intensive, but if you're good at it and you've learned from one situation, you can carry those results to another situation and more than likely find results that you can use across the board. Then there is the occupancy evaluation. An occupancy evaluation is an assessment that is conducted while the client is still in the building or in the space where they are currently located. You would go in and do some type of evaluation. You may go in and observe, you may have a survey, but you will go in and ask questions and observe to find out what the issues are. Trust me, many things can be learned when you do these occupancy evaluations. A post-occupancy evaluation, many times referred to as a POE, differs from the other types of surveys in that you go in after the people have moved into their new space, give them 2-3 months, and then you ask them questions. You did your questions before, you found out what the issues were. During the design process, you tried to solve those issues. So now you're going to go back in and you're going to ask them questions. Basically, did we fix what was wrong before? What other issues have come up? Are you satisfied with the space? When you do these kind of things, you are going to find that maybe you solved a problem and you can carry that forward, or maybe you created another problem and you've got to fix it. These things are really important. They are used basically to determine if you have accomplished the goals that you set forward to do in the process of the design of this space. The POEs can be used to ensure that the design for your future projects are much better. Not just for fixing anything, but you can apply the knowledge that was learned in these to future projects. Very important. There are 3 levels of research to ensure environmental needs. The pre-design research that informs the design. So you're going to do the research so that you know what you need to do in the design that you are doing. The occupancy evaluation, this is the research that's done on the end users to determine the design needs for improvement. So you're going to go in, you're going to talk to the people that occupy the space, find out what's making them uncomfortable, find out what they're happy about, You find out. It may be simple things like the copy room is too far from where we need it to be, or the glare on my computer. And guys, I've said this before, your lighting is very important on glare on computers. The type of computer screens they have, the monitors that they have is very important. Another type of research that we do is the post-occupancy evaluation, which I just talked about. This research is done after the occupants have gone in and moved into their new space, and you go back in to find out if you met the goals. Did you fix what was needed? Are the users happy? If your users are not happy after you've done a design project, you're not going to get more jobs. This stuff is very important that you do it and you implement it in the designs that you do on a daily basis. Why environmental psychologists? One, environmental psychologists are trained and qualified to understand the thoughts and emotional processes that produce or shape human desires. We are programmed to think through stuff and what people are saying and why they're saying it. They may say something and we may cue in on something that is very relevant. And it's like, whoa, we need to change this. We need to fix this. We need to add this to this situation so it becomes better quality. For instance, if every schoolroom in the world had a dimmer on the light switch, teachers wouldn't have to holler at the students. Simply because if students are rowdy, you can lower the lights in a room and they will calm down. That is simple human behavior that we have taken and applied it to help teachers not holler in the classroom when students become rowdy. We need to know these things. We need to implement these things. The environmental psychologists also help people understand the differences between present and future-oriented needs. Someone may present you with a problem today, but what is that need going to be in 3 years or 4 years or 5 years? We can help clients to determine what is needed in the future. It may be different than what you need right now, but how are we going to adapt this space so in the future it meets their needs? Environmental psychologists can also ascertain the primary, secondary, and tertiary functions of environments so they can be built to fulfill human needs. If we do not design our spaces to accommodate human activity, then we have failed. We have failed the users and we have failed our own colleagues. We have failed ourselves because I promise you, you will not be getting return jobs. If that client is not happy and the people that work for that person is not happy and they're complaining, you won't get a job. Your name will be spread far and wide by do not hire that person because he or she's bad. You got to do your job and do it appropriately. This is why I continue to say interior design work is not based on a concept, it's based on function. Now, can the concept be based on function? Yes. But a concept that's based on a frivolous object? No. It's got to be based on the functions that are needed within that space, and they've got to be met appropriately and properly. There's different types of methods of research, and we're going to look at 5 of them. Covert observation, we will watch a group of people, observe that group of people, make notes on it and everything for maybe an extended period of time, but they don't know that we're watching them. What's happening is not that we're spying on them, is that we are watching them to see how they normally behave. If you tell somebody you're going to watch them, they may correct behavior. But we want to see real behavior, everyday behavior. Because if we don't see that and we don't see exactly what's happening, then we cannot correct the situation. Covert observation is without the people knowing. Overt observation is that we're still looking at people in their habitat or in this environment for an extended period of time, but they know that they're being observed. Sometimes if they know, like I said, they're going to change behavior. which does not give us a real picture of what is going on. Then we have participant observation. This is adopting a role within a given setting to gain firsthand knowledge of situations and circumstances. For instance, as a designer, I would ask the owner of the company if he would hire me into the company to just see what's going on. So they would give me a position within the company, and I would talk with the people and interact with people and work the machinery or whatever I was assigned to do. But hopefully it would be so I could see the whole operation and know how things are handled within that operation so that I could really see and understand. So this is a participant observation. I am inside that system and I am working with them. While I'm working, I'm also observing. I'm taking notes and writing down issues and good things and bad things. It doesn't have to be always issues. It can be good things. Then we also have active expert interviews. This is taking an individual on a tour of a similar building to identify strengths and weaknesses. So maybe I have a client and I am going to redo their bank, and I take them maybe to another bank that I have done. Or maybe even that person says, I want to take you to a bank that I went to the other day and I really like the way it looks, it's operating, and I've talked to the manager there and he said it was fine for us to go. Two different ways of doing these active expert interviews. You're going inside, you're not a participant, but you are you're observing what is going on, hopefully to identify strengths and weaknesses. Another way that we can do research is by surveys. This can be done with a piece of paper where you have the questions written out and they respond, or it can be where you go and physically talk to the people and you write down their responses. But basically, it's to learn what the supports and the constraints that are needed for a project that you're working on. Another type is design parties and brainstorming sessions. This is when you have people that come together from the environment that you're working on and you sit down and talk with them. You may ask a question and somebody says, oh, I can't stand that because of this. And then you may say, well, what would make it better? And then that person may say something that will stimulate another person to say something, and there's a conversation that's developed. In these type of situations, it is better that the researcher record what they're saying. Now, you do not want them to feel threatened by the possibility that these responses may be given to their boss. In that situation, you need to ensure them that none of this will be reported back to the boss. It will not be identified. The ideas, the problems may be relayed, but not the people that are saying it. So you've got to be careful about this, because if people do not understand that their privacy is protected, then they're not going to say anything. Then we have a design charrette that is basically a gathering of different stakeholders of a project in an attempt to resolve conflicts and identify solutions. You may have the manager of one area and the manager of another area, which the two are complaining that the work is not getting done between the two areas. Sometimes this is a problem that needs to be worked out within the staff itself or the employees themselves. Sometimes it is a physical problem because whoever did the design, whoever did the layout before, did not do their adjacency studies well. They did not understand how departments need to work with each other. This is why we have y'all do the adjacency studies, and to understand which department is really going to work closer with each other and which ones are not necessarily that need to be that close. This is the reason. So you must understand the workings within the company that you're designing the spaces for. A design party versus a design charrette. First of all, you need to be interested in the people themselves in order to do this. they've got to understand that you want to put their needs first. You are interested in them. Secondly, they need to know that you are interested in the success of the design as a whole. That you cannot just go into one department and fix their issues when it impacts another area. You've got to look at the whole thing. Truthfully, I think the design parties and the design charrettes need to work together, because the design party is interested in the people and the design charrette is interested in the whole design. So when you combine the two, you get a more perfect picture of what you're dealing with. What is an hypothesis? An hypothesis is a supposition or principle that is not proved, but it is assumed. When we have an hypothesis, we cannot go out and say it's fact. It is not fact until we do the research and prove that it's wrong or that it's right. In this statement that I've just made, we understand that theory and hypothesis are not the same. A theory is something that we have done some research and we have proven it either wrong or right. So this theory may be right, this theory may be wrong. An hypothesis is a testable idea within a relatively short period of time. Now, there are some studies that are longitudinal studies and it takes years to do them. And then there's some studies that are very short and succinct. For instance, I'm involved in a research project right now where we're looking at the math skills of interior design students. What we're finding is they're not very good. And math is one of the things that interior designers must know. This hypothesis is going to be proven within a short period of time. We have the data and we're in the process right now of figuring it out and developing a theory. A theory can endure for decades or centuries and has been verified. For instance, when we get through with this study, we can say that interior design students need to have a good math background in order to be a more successful design student. We can say that. That theory will stand until somebody can disprove it. So it will be there for a long period of time until it can be disproven, which means there's another hypothesis that says math is not needed for design students, and somebody will prove that to be true. Remember that an hypothesis is a supposition or principle that is not proved but is assumed. A theory is something that has been proven or verified, whether it's right or wrong, and it will last for centuries, for a long time, because it stands. There's truth to it. How is hypothesis related to environmental design? There's different types of hypothesis that we have used in environmental design, and many more will be developed. We're going to look at a few here. The biophilia hypothesis is based on the assumption that people have a genetic need to be among other living organisms. We need other people and we need nature. We like living things. We don't like to be in a dead area. It's not pretty. There's no connection there for us. There's the frustration aggression hypothesis, and this is based on an idea that when a person's goals attainment is interfered with, he or she will become frustrated and aggression will ensue. Meaning that if I cannot do what I need to do, or a goal that I want to achieve has been stopped for some reason, then I will become aggressive, attacking others, attacking maybe even myself. Frustration aggression hypothesis has been proven, and we can base research on it. There's the pleasure arousal dominance hypothesis. This is based on a viewpoint that emotion is a mediator between our environments, our personalities, and our behavior. And truly it is. This may even change from minute to minute, day to day. For instance, I may have woken up today in a very good mood. I had a good dream. I had a restful night. I slept well, and I woke up relaxed and refreshed and ready to take on the day. But tomorrow, I maybe had a bad dream or something happened right before I went to bed that was disturbing. I did not sleep well. I woke up and I was just angry and irritated. Unfortunately, when we do that, it sets the mood for the day. We have to understand that our viewpoints on different things are many times based on our emotions, and that this hypothesis is true. It's one that we can depend upon. There are no single causes to why we do what we do. There is not. There's a social and biological factors can affect the behavior that we display. Let's talk about something here. We are walking down the street. We have gum in our mouth and it's getting old. We want to spit it out. There's no trash can around. So what are we going to do? Are we going to go ahead and spit it out and let somebody step in it? Or are we going to get something, a tissue or something from our purse or from a friend to spit it out so nobody will step in it, and then literally hold on to it until we can get to a trash can and properly dispose of it? Or are you just going to spit it out and let it be a problem for somebody else? We may think, well, the person acted this way because there was no trash can. That is not necessarily true. If we say that the action happened because there was no trash can around, then what we've done is basically stated that this was a deterministic behavior, that everyone would spit out their gum on the ground if there was not a trash can accessible. But that's not necessarily true. For some people, it could be, but not across the board. So let's look at this a little bit further. I have some diagrams here that we need to look at. In this situation, environmental psychology will embrace multiple factors and rejects a single variable approach. In other words, it's not just because the trash can wasn't there. There's other things that are dictating this behavior. Other sciences, though, not environmental psychology, but other sciences follow a purist approach, which is a single approach, or what they call the magic bullet approach. We don't do that. We don't look at one thing. We look at the whole situation, the person's behavior. What are we given in that setting so that the people there could accomplish the task? What's going on in this setting? What is happening? We have a multimodal approach that utilizes both social and physical science perspectives. Environmental psychology argues that a human environment behaviors derive from a combination of social, cultural, and biological factors. So we've got to look at all three: social, cultural, biological. Environmental psychology is holistic. It includes the biology of the person, the makeup of the body, the social and environmental causal agents. So the biological is how the body functions and how it responds to the environment and social stimuli. It is also the absorption and the secretion of neurochemicals or hormones within our brain or other bodily regions. We've got to understand all this and how it affects behavior. Then on the social level, it is our belief structure, our culture, or our personal experiences. Environmental includes noise, weather conditions, and smells. And this is just a small snippet of things that we look at in environmental research. Environmental psychology can solve problems related to learning issues, why students can't learn or why others learn better than another group, our motivation, why we do some things and we don't do other things. Our perception, how we see things, is very important to environmental psychology. How our attitudes are formed is also very important. Social interaction is another one that we look at, how people interact with each other. These things help to explain why humans engage in particular behaviors in relationship to their environments. So you can see that we can't look at just one thing. We have to look at everything. Many times it's not even an environmental problem, it's an interpersonal relationship problem that is causing distress in people. It may not be the environment, but we still have to look at everything. That's one reason we do the interviews and the surveys and the observations, is to understand what is really going on. The study that we look at in environmental psychology helps us to understand the consequences of changing an environment. And the reason we say this is because you may have a really good functioning environment and you go in and change something and it's going to totally destroy the functioning of that environment. You have got to know what you're changing and why you're changing it. You can't just do it frivolously. There are different areas of impact that have been identified by researchers in the past, and some of the more recent ones are these that we're going to talk about right now. Claire Cooper Marcus and Naomi Sachs discussed how landscapes could be therapeutic and restorative. There have been research done before this about how restorative landscapes can be for human beings. I know there was a study done about education and why students will look outside a lot when there's windows. What they found was when the student looks outside just for a few minutes and then turns back and looks at the instructor while they're lecturing, what is happening is the student's mind is being relaxed so they can absorb more information. The school systems in Texas, in the city where I lived for a while, went in and closed up the windows in the student area so that there was only one window with light coming into the room, and that was up by the instructor. Well, what happened was the students became more agitated because they didn't have that source to relax their mind. But was any research done on this before they did this? No, they just did it because they thought it would work. It would fix it. It didn't fix it. And there was research available then that could have told them that this was not going to work, but they did it anyway. Really a sad situation. Elizabeth Brawley looked at the psychological and environmental aspects of designing for Alzheimer's disease. In fact, the chair of my department of the university that I graduated from, Dr. Schroyer, did mountains of research in this area. And I worked with her and learned so much about Alzheimer's, how we design environments for people that are afflicted with this disease. It's a horrible disease. And we've got to understand that, one, they do not like change. They want it to remain the same. For this reason, when my sister had a personal care home for people with Alzheimer's, I encouraged her to have the families bring in the furniture of their loved ones since they knew that furniture. They wouldn't be afraid of that environment because they don't like change. They don't like it. It's scary for them. Their minds are regressing, not going forward, are not keeping up with what is going on day to day. Their minds are going backwards. It's really a horrible disease. Truthfully, more research needs to be done in the area. Richard Luer wrote a book called The Last Child in the Woods, and it revealed the strong link between exposure to nature and children's mental health. This research relates to the research that Claire Cooper Marcus and Naomi Sachs did with the restorative landscapes. It's definitely a good thing to let children play in nature. It is so good for them. And they learn things. They learn how to cope with their emotions. They become more creative. It's just a really good thing for children to be outside and not glued to computers. Computers are horrible for children. Keep them off of the computers. Let them play. Let them play in the pots and pans. Let them create. Let their brains free and thinking, because if we don't, we're not going to have people that can design computers down the road. Another research was about making healthy places. When we make healthy places, we can identify a range of possible benefits from well-designed urban environments. In other words, if we've got a healthy place and we can observe the behavior there and we design that place based on research they have said would bring about healthy behavior, then we can further our research and bring about well-designed environments from the beginning and not make mistakes. So our research is very important. This is the end of part 2. We will continue with part 3 in the next segment. Thank you.